Tried to film this video last week and had some issues. So we're trying it again today. This is an AR10 chambered in 6.5 Creedmoor. It's got an Arken 4-16 scope on it, silencer Velos LBP suppressor. It's got the Proof Research carbon wrapped barrel. It's got a Geissele SSA-E. This thing is set up pretty good. It is on loan to the channel right now. I was told it's 0 to 100, so we're gonna try that first and then hopefully move back from there. So we're back 65 yards farther, 165. Let's see where we are here. Okay, let's move it back. Welcome back to Sawtooth Tactical. Today I tried something I've never really done much of before, and that is long distance shooting with a large frame gas gun, an AR10, chambered in 6.5 Creedmoor to be more specific. And this thing is pretty sweet. As you can see, SilencerCo Velos LBP suppressor. It's got a Proof Research carbon fiber wrapped barrel, Magpul bipod. It's built on Aero Precision enhanced receivers, Aero Precision rail. It's got a Geissele SSA-E trigger in it, and it's set up really well for distance shooting. Arken 4-16 scope, even got a phase 5 bad lever, or whatever phase 5 calls their ambi bolt catch. But this thing, I learned a lot with it this week, and I had a lot of fun with it, and so I want to talk about long range shooting. All right, we're back at 220. Right on, let's go farther. We're out past 300 now. Let's hope I did my math right. Like I said at the very beginning of the video, I did try to film this video last week and I learned some lessons. So the biggest takeaway is that long distance shooting is not really the same as short distance shooting. On this channel, I've done a lot of mag dumping at steel targets in front of the camera to film YouTube videos. And you know, I've taken my AR-15s out to 150, 200 yards. But I've never really tried to shoot past that, and I've never done what it takes to know how to do that. And so I was really excited when I got this rifle on loan from my good friend Nick. Again, thank you, Nick. He's also the one that loaned me this suppressor, as well as another suppressor that we'll do a video on later this week. Actually, that video will be out on Friday. But he loaned me this thing, and he didn't tell me much about it. I asked him what it was zeroed at. He told me 100. And so when I tried to film this video last week, I shot a couple rounds at 100 and it was dead nuts accurate. And so I took it back to 220 and it took me a few shots to get on target. And I was doing what I would do with like my regular AR-15 with a 1-6 LPVO on it. I was just trying to hold a little high, Kentucky windage, and that didn't really work. And I was a little bit disappointed. And then I actually had some malfunctions, which we'll talk about later in the video, and I didn't have the tools with me to deal with them. So I spent this week doing actually very minimal research, but figuring out ballistics and how to dial a scope in order to get hits at greater distances. And when I did that today, it worked great. So before we get into all of that, let's have a quick word from our channel partner. This video is sponsored by Aura. Aura is peace of mind in a world that is so much online these days. Every time that one of you guys clicks the first link in the description and signs up for aura.com/sawtoothtactical, you help me fund this channel to be able to bring you guys new cool stuff to show. What does Aura offer you? Well, for one, if you use that link, you get 2 weeks free trial. That's 14 days, and it is only $12 a month after that. And for that $12, like I said, you get peace of mind. What they do is that they go online and they find data brokers that have your information, and they submit opt-out requests on your behalf. And then scammers, spammers, all these things online that want to take advantage of you can't get a hold of your information anymore. I've been using it now for months, and it's really helped me out quite a bit. I'm one of those people that really gets sick of getting spam calls, spam emails, all this stuff all the time, and I don't get it anymore ever since I've been using Aura. It is well worth the money, but you also get a lot more than just opt out from data brokers. You get a VPN, home title monitoring, password manager. Basically, all of the stuff that your online security, they just take care of all of it for you. It's super easy to set up. It takes like minutes, and it hardly costs you anything. Think about all the other things that you spend more than $12 a month on. This just, it's nice to not have your information out there anymore and to not have to worry about that stuff anymore. So check out Aura, use my link. You get 14 days, 2 weeks free if you use that link. Again, that's aura.com/sawtoothtactical. I really, really love Aura, and I think you will too. Part of this whole thing was just testing this SilencerCo Velos LBP. I tested it last week on my 300 blackout shooting subsonic, and it sounded literally amazing. Didn't have to wear ear pro. Back pressure was low, LBP, low back pressure. It was fantastic. And I also took probably about 10 shots with this thing last week as well. But like I said, I kind of struggled with it a little. Well, this week I tested this can out on this as well as on my Mark 18. Again, that video will be out on Friday. It's going to be a suppressor comparison between 3 different suppressors, 3 different sizes, 3 different price points, but all in 5.56. But I shot this thing a lot on this AR10 today, and it was really, really nice. I only noticed any gas in my face toward the end of my range session when I started getting really confident at about 320 yards, and I was shooting a little bit faster, but not really any more gas than I probably would notice normally. I don't really think it was the suppressor back pressure. And speaking of gas, this thing does have an adjustable gas block. So if I'd wanted to, I'm sure I could have turned the gas down a little bit, but I didn't really want to mess with Nick's gun and Nick's gas systems and the way that he has his gun set up, because I'm sure he has it tuned the way he likes. Speaking of Nick having it the way he likes, he does have this scope zeroed very well. At 100 yards, it was super easy. At 200 yards, it was super easy. At 300 yards, I started having to concentrate a little bit more, but it was still super easy. Now, why was that? Well, because I learned about ballistics a little bit and about bullet drop. Now, of course, these are concepts I already understand and have known about for a long time. But shooting 5.56 ARs and even 300 blackout subsonic, mainly I'm either using red dots, EOTech magnifiers, or I have a 1:6 LPVO on my 16-inch rifle. And for the most part, I'm not dialing MOA or mils. I'm just kind of holding and using the Christmas tree reticle, and knowing where my holds should be. And that's mostly worked for me. But I haven't really done a whole lot of precision shooting yet. And now I'm kind of into it. And I think I'm going to have to build myself an AR10, which is exciting. It's going to be a new build on the channel that I hope that you guys will all be into. But the biggest thing that I learned was this. So I went out and bought some of this Hornady match ammo. Well, on the back of it, it has ballistics data. And it tells you basically what your holds are at different distances. Well, if you think about what an MOA is, MOA being 1 inch at 100 yards, you go to those greater distances and you can dial your scope if you understand the math, which is pretty simple, at least the way I think I understand it. You dial your scope and then you can just put your reticle right on the target and make hits every time as long as your trigger squeeze is good. I think I've got this figured out. I was just getting a lot of hits out here, well over 300 yards. Last week I had a lot of trouble, but I was kind of just Kentucky windaging it. This week I've learned to dial my MOA a little bit, did some research on ballistics. I'm having a much easier time. Stoked. And speaking of trigger squeeze being good, it's pretty easy with a gun like this because, of course, it has a Geissele SSA-E in it. Now, the SSA-E is the same as my favorite trigger, the SDE that I've got in both those guns. In fact, technically all four of these rifles here have Geissele triggers. SDE, SDE, SSP, and that one has an ALG AK trigger. ALG is Geissele's sister company, Amy Lynn Geissele. I like Geissele triggers. Well, this has an SSA-E. It's the same as the SDE, but curved instead of flat. And for shooting distance, it really does make a big difference. So, if you look at it, see if we can fit this all in camera. It has that very smooth, very light take-up, and an extremely crisp break. And what you can do with that is you can prep the trigger and then break the shot when you know you're on target. As long as, you're not moving your sight picture around a whole bunch, pretty easy to break the shot when you're on target, especially with a scope that turns all the way up to 16. 16 power is quite a bit. It's more than I've ever used before, and it makes things very easy at distance. So at 100 yards, I think I had it on 4 power, which is the lowest that this scope goes. This is an Arken Optics 4-16 rifle scope. And the difference between it and an LPVO, well, LPVO stands for low powered variable optic. This is more of a high powered variable optic. You can, dial up your power the same way right here, but it does other things as well. So, you know what? I think we're going to go up close to show this. That'll make a lot more sense. So I'm going to explain my very quick and dirty math that I did today, and I'm sure true long distance shooters will probably tell me that I'm doing this wrong, but it worked well for me and I was getting hits. So this thing, you can actually dial your scope. So each click is a quarter MOA. And then it's got a zero stop. So if you go all the way back there, this is where it's zeroed at 100 yards. Well, then on your match grade ammo here, you see it has 100 plus 1.9, 200 0, 300 minus 7.8. And so what those are is inches away from your zero, or bullet drop basically. Well, think about at your distances. So if this one was zeroed at 100, well then at 200 yards, you want to be holding basically 2 inches high. Well, 1 MOA is 1 inch at 100 yards. So 1 MOA is 2 inches at 200 yards. And so if I dial this 4 clicks, each click being a quarter MOA, that's 1 MOA. I can hold it the same place I was at 100 and make hits at 200. 300 yards here, it says minus 7.8. So just round that up for the sake of this video, 8 plus 2, because I'm already, holding 2 at 200 yards compared to 100 where it was zeroed. So that's 10 inches. Well, 1 MOA is 3 inches at 100 yards. So what do I want? About 3.5 MOA. And this is literally all I did at the range. Now, yes, I could have done this much more precisely, and I'm sure that serious long distance shooters do their math very carefully. But that's literally all I did. You know, just think about what an MOA is, an inch at 100. Think about how many hundreds of yards I'm at, how many inches each MOA equals then, and how many inches I need to hold high. Dial it for that using the ballistic information on the box of match ammo from Hornady here. These are about $2 a round, but you know what? They're pretty satisfying when you hit and you hear that, you know, delay between pulling the trigger and the sound of the round hitting steel coming back to you. So worth $2 a round? Yeah, I'd say probably so. And I'm sure I could have taken this rifle out even farther. But I was having such fun at, I think I was at about 325 yards max today, that I started kind of mag dumping with this because I was having a good time, and I soon ran out of ammo. All right, loaded up with some Hornady match. This stuff is about $2 a round, so it better be good. The reason I talk about the importance of actually knowing that ballistic data and dialing your scope properly for it and for your distance is because I did take this thing out last week and just tried to Kentucky windage it, like I said, and I did not do very well. Even at just 220 yards, it took me a few rounds to get hits on target, and I didn't feel like it should have with an AR10 in 6.5 Creedmoor, and so I was very disappointed. But it's because I went out there not knowing what the hell I was doing. And that is important. And you might already, if you're a serious long range shooter, you might tell me I don't know what the hell I'm doing from what I just explained right there. But it did work for me today. And this is something new that I'm going to get into and I'm going to learn more and more about. And I'm going to build myself an AR-10 and I'm going to get really good at distance shooting. Maybe build a bolt gun. But what I learned is that you do have to know your bullet drop at different distances. You got to know your dope, and dialing the scope made it so much easier than just trying to hold a little high, which is what I was trying to do. And so I'm going to put in that video footage from last week right here, where you see that at 100 yards, yeah, a couple shots, no problem, because the rifle was zeroed at 100. Then I take it back farther and I started missing rounds and not getting on target, and I was really disappointed because I thought that this thing was going to just be like a cheat code. Well, it turns out it is, and I just didn't know what I was doing. So here's that footage right now. Too easy. Let's go back. Let's try 220 yards here. Something I'm definitely new at. So it took me a few shots to get on at 220. And we're back a little bit farther. I'm going to raise the bipod up a bit and see if that makes a difference. as you can see from that footage, for one thing, it was windy as hell out there. And when you've got ear pro on with the wind, it was making it really hard for me to concentrate. And I've got every other excuse in the world. But the main thing being, I just did not shoot very well. And I realized that I needed to learn some things. And literally all that I learned was just that. Just, where to hold at different distances and where to dial the scope for that when you think about what an MOA is at different distances. That simple as far as what I use today to make it work. And then once I got out to 325, I just started having fun with it. And really, the only shots I missed at that distance today were because I pulled them because I was maybe trying to shoot too fast or not prep the trigger and then break the shot. But if I did my part, it was easy to make hits. And I'm sure I could have taken this thing out to much greater distances if I wanted to. I'm sure that I could take this out to 500, 600, 700. I guarantee that if I know my holds and I know where to dial, this thing will do it. Because when you dial your power up to 16, that target's still pretty big in your scope. Even at, where I was today at 325. I mean, it was as big as as it is at, 150 yards in my 1:6 LPVO dialed all the way up to 6. And so having a good trigger, having a good barrel, Proof Research carbon barrel, this is a very expensive, very good barrel, having a good scope, all these things make for having a rifle that you can be very accurate at distance with. And it makes it really fun. And it's something that I feel like I have neglected as far as my shooting skills. I got a lot and I shoot at 100 yards and in a lot. And every once in a while I'll take it out, 150, 200 yards. But for the most part, I'm shooting at less distances than that. One of the reasons I love building SBRs and short guns, short range guns. But now I've kind of found something that I think is going to be a new thing for me to get into. And I'm really excited about it. And so I think that you guys can look forward to us doing an AR10 build series on the channel and maybe a bolt gun build series because this was a lot of fun. And I do think that if you are kind of stuck doing one kind of shooting a lot, maybe it's good to, try something else out. I was doing a lot of short to mid-range stuff, and long-range shooting can be a heck of a lot of fun. And you might not even consider 325 yards long range. But it was where I had the distance to shoot today. There were people at the next spot behind me, which would have been 500. So it was as far as I could have shot today. And it was pretty easy with this thing. So Aero Precision, I've built a couple rifles on Aero Precision receivers. And my 300 Blackout right there is on an Aero Precision upper and lower M4E1 and an Aero Precision handguard. Well, this is Aero Precision's M5 platform, which is their AR10. The biggest thing, if you are going to build an AR10, is understand that there really isn't a mil spec like there is with the AR15. And you do kind of have to make sure you do your research and get parts that go with each other. You can get an upper and a lower from two different companies, and they might not match up because there's the LR308 pattern and there's the DPMS pattern or the AR10 pattern. I even get confused because I haven't built one yet. But there are a couple of different patterns as far as the way that the receivers meet up to each other. And if you get two receivers that are not the same pattern, they will not work. I do think that Aero Precision makes a good M5, their AR10 system. I've heard from a lot of people that it is pretty dang good. There are other ones out there. You can get an MR762 from HK, or you can get a Knights Armament, AR10. There's some great options out there. But I think if you're like me and you like to build, the Aero Precision M5 system is a good one to build off of because as long as you get the receivers that match, the whole build should go together pretty well. Now, Nick, who built this rifle, a good friend of mine, what he did tell me is that getting this thing dialed in as far as gassing it correctly and making it reliable took some work. And that could be just because of the 6.5 Creedmoor chambering. It sounds like. I think building one in 308 is a little bit more simple. From the little bit of research that I've done, 308's been around for a lot longer. But at this point, 6.5 Creedmoor has been around for a bit too. And there is information on it now. But just know that it's not going to be quite as simple as slapping together a 5.56 AR-15. There's just a little bit more that goes into it. This one does have an adjustable gas system, and it seemed to be gassed just right when I was shooting it. Although 3 times I did have the bolt go forward and the round not be caught on the extractor. And so when I went out last week shooting, that happened and I didn't have any way to get it out. And so that was kind of the end of my shooting the 6.5 that day, which is good because then I figured it out this week and was able to go back out. But it did happen twice again today. And so I don't know if it's a gassing issue. Well, it's not a gassing issue because both times is when I had loaded a fresh mag and then dropped the bolt on it. So I'd put a mag in, drop the bolt, and then the round wouldn't be hung up on that extractor. And so I'm not really sure why that is. What I used is a paint can opener. That is a really good tool for getting around out of your chamber. Makes it very easy. And I brought that with me today, so it wasn't an issue. But anyway, if you are thinking about getting into the AR10 game, it's something I wasn't that interested in for a long time. And now I really am, just after making a bunch of hits at 325 today, like it was easy. It just kind of opened my eyes to the potential of a large frame gun shooting, bigger bore rounds that do better at distance with a higher powered scope. Things that my regular little AR-15s can't necessarily do. Now, I'm not saying that I can't make shots at 325 with an AR-15. Absolutely can. But when you have a scope like this, it really makes things easy. And most people are not putting 4 to 16 scopes on an AR-15 5.56. Not saying you can't. I'm just saying a 1 to 6L PVO or even a dot magnifier combo is much more common for that platform. But let me know what you guys think about long distance shooting, about the AR10 platform. If I have left things out or said things that are inaccurate as far as what it took for me to be able to consistently get hits, and you are a long distance shooter and you know what you're talking about better than I do, say it down in the comments. Let the viewers know, because the last thing I want to do is put out bad information. But what I can do is use my experience and tell everyone what worked for me, and that did work well for me. And it was a lot of fun. I really, really enjoyed it. And that's a big part of shooting, is that it's supposed to be fun, and it's very satisfying when you make those hits and then, there's a good bit of time before you hear this shot hit the steel. That's a pretty satisfying feeling. And besides that, it's good to be a well-rounded shooter, to be able to shoot pistol well, to be able to shoot, your home defense stuff, short, medium, mid-range, but then also long range. I think that is as important, if not more important, than anything else. And so to be a real well-rounded shooter, I think something like this is honestly necessary. And so, again, I want to thank you, Nick. I really do appreciate it. And I hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you did, please give me a like. Make sure you subscribe to Sawtooth Tactical. And from Sawtooth Tactical, stay strapped or get clapped.